This is Principles of Management, and the session is on managing ethics and social responsibility. Business ethics are applied ethics, that is, the application of ethical principles to business situations. One question that comes up very often is, what is the difference between morals and ethics? The Oxford Dictionary of Philosophy puts it this way: although the morality of people and their ethics amounts to the same thing, there is a usage that restricts morality to systems such as that of Immanuel Kant, based on notions such as duty, obligation, principles of conduct, reserving ethics for the more Aristotelian approach to practical reasoning, based on the notion of a virtue, and generally avoiding the separation of moral considerations from other practical considerations. Morality then stems in its usage from a sense of duty, an obligation to obey a set of rules that are ascribed usually to a deity. Ethics are more often phrased as goals, virtues, and reasoning and wisdom. So this is a brief, and perhaps altogether too brief, rundown of some of the ethical constructs used throughout history. The divine command theory is a teleological argument, meaning it comes from God. Things are prescribed as a divine law to be right or wrong. If you find a wallet in the street, the right thing to do is to find the owner and return the wallet to him or her. Another approach is the ethical egoism theory, which is one that suggests that people act in their own rational self-interest, and the emphasis is on the word rational. It's the foundation of Adam Smith's economic theories. This is not, however, to be confused with some sort of hedonism, a temporal, transient, feeling good for the moment thing. This calls for a reasoned judgment of assessing alternatives. Within the context of a social contract, an agreement to give up some abilities in exchange for behaving in a way that all may benefit, rational self-interest provides a strong motive for behavior, as prescribed by certain societal constraints. As Robert Solomon, in Ethical Issues in Business, a philosophical approach, pointed out, business ethics is too often conceived of as a set of impositions and constraints, obstacles to business behavior rather than the motivating force of that behavior, and ethics, as we just said, are meant to be inspirational. Jeremy Bentham, as followed by John Stuart Mill, derived a system that came to be known as utilitarianism, which is defined as providing the greatest good for the greatest number of people. This has also been posed as a mix of good and bad things. Supposing there's an ongoing drought in an area and a new dam is needed to supply water to about 200,000 people that live in the area. A single dam can cure the problem, but 6 farmers currently occupy the land where the dam will need to be built. Can we inflict a harm, that is, displace the farmers and of course compensate them for their trouble, but displacing the farmers is a harm, in order to provide a benefit, water, to the 200,000 people that need it? And that's how the mixing of good and bad come in. For the American legal system and the way business is practiced, utilitarianism plays a role here. In a case called Halsgraf versus the Long Island Railroad, a New York case from 1928, a decision by the New York Court of Appeals, written by Chief Judge Benjamin Cardozo, helped establish the concept of proximate cause, which is a limitation of negligence with respect to the scope of liability. In the decision, the question was this: is a person liable for the consequences of his or her act, no matter how unforeseeable, or only for those that are reasonably predictable? It is a consequentialism argument. If you predict the consequences of something, you are responsible for the behavior that affects it. And the answer was, of course, for the reasonably predictable consequences. Immanuel Kant a philosopher who lived in the later part of the 18th century, is famous for, among many other things, the concept of the moral or categorical imperative, a concept derived from duty. We can divide motivations into means and ends. The categorical imperative may only be based on something that is an end in itself, not on something that is an avenue to some other need, a desire or purpose. And people should be treated as ends, not means. Moral law, he said, is based on reason and is not contingent on circumstances. It is unconditional with respect to wills or desires, or those things that would make us happy. This is something that belongs to the world of the rational. Things must be done for the right reasons. The work of John Rawls, who is famous for the term distributive justice, is based on the concept of a social contract made among people who are both reasonable and rational. His starting point is that most reasonable principles of justice are those everyone would accept and agree to from a fair position. Distributive justice refers to a socially good allocation of goods within society. And this brings us to a classic conflict between method and outcome, between Kant and Rawls. Is something fair if the opportunities are equal or if the result is equal? Its underlying assumption is revolutionary when compared to that of Kant. Kant said that the law should be based on reason and not circumstance. Rawls said that circumstance are the most critical thing to consider. One other thing to know, John Dewey offered a comment on this that is also relevant. His opinion was that life and life's circumstances are complicated, in fact too complicated for any one ethical contract yet to be devised or to be universally applicable. Kant's approach is not always appropriate, but neither is that of Rawls. His advice was to let us use our best seasoned judgment and let wisdom be our guide. There is something appealing about this in spite of its vagueness. Seasoned and rational minds can disagree. Now, in the next session, we are going to do something completely different, so there is no good segue here. We are going to be talking about small business startups. Have a nice evening.